Hello, algebra students. Please write your name, date, and period. Today's lesson is 1-4, literal equations and formulas. And the objectives for today are rearrange formulas and equations to highlight a quantity of interest by rearranging the variable using the same reasoning used to solve equations. Use formulas and equations to solve problems. The vocabulary for today, I also put in Spanish so that you can learn the Spanish the Spanish vocabulary and the English vocabulary. Bear with my accent. Isolate, aislar, simple interest, interés simple, variable, variable, formula, formula, literal equation, equación literal. Like I said, bear with my accent. First off, we're going to model and discuss. Nora drew a non-square rectangle. Then she drew the length of each side from end to end to make a line segment to represent the perimeter. Write an equation that represents the perimeter of the model shown. So if you remember, perimeter just means we are adding the sides to go all the way around. So we're not actually going to count the squares, we're just going to use the variables W for width and L for length. So if we start with the length, we have length plus width plus length plus width. That gives us the perimeter. And since it says equation, we need to have an equals, and we're going to use the letter P, or the variable P, for perimeter. For part B, it says rearrange the order of the sides so you can represent the perimeter with a different equation. So do you see how the length is blue and the width is orange? We could put the lengths together, so we could have length plus width plus width, and that would be equal to the perimeter. For part C, how many ways can you express the relationship in parts A and B? Are any of them more useful than others? Well, we could also write it as P equals 2L plus 2W, and that's a little bit easier to write. If we were trying to figure out what the length was, and we were given the perimeter, we could do the perimeter minus the widths, the two widths, to get the length, two lengths, but we just want one length, so we have to divide the other side of the equation by 2. So if we were trying to find length, that's what we would do. And if we were trying to find width, it would look very similar. It would be P minus 2 lengths divided by 2 equals the width. So it depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for a perimeter, this is better. If you're looking for length, this one's better. And if you're looking for width, this equation is better. But they are all equivalent. Okay, so this one would be for perimeter, length, width. Next, we're going to look at this definition. Rewrite literal equations. A literal equation is an equation that states a relationship between one quantity and one or more other quantities. I'm actually not sure if it's literal equation or formula. I think they can both be there. So literal equation, or you can also write formula in there. The simple interest formula is I equals PRT. It is a literal equation because letters represent both variables and unknown constants. When you go to the bank and you deposit money into your savings account, they might offer you interest on the money that you put into the bank. So if you keep your money in there for a certain amount of time, they will give you a rate of interest. And so the I in this formula represents interest, and the P represents principal. The R represents interest rate, and the T represents time. For this example, we're going to use I, interest, equals P, principal, times R, rate, times T, time, to write the equation in terms of P, the principal. So we want to rearrange this equation. We have I equals P, R, T, and we want to solve for P, which is right here. We want to get the P by itself. So we're going to divide by the R and the T. R and T is being multiplied by the P, so we want to undo that. And when we do that, the R's and T's cancel out, leaving the P all alone or isolated. P equals I divided by RT. Principal equals interest divided by rate times time. That's how we solve for P. And we're going to do the same thing, very similar. We're going to write the equation in terms of R, the rate. So we have I equals PRT, and this time we're solving for the rate. So we're going to divide by the PT on both sides. And then that leaves us with just R equals. Notice how it was on the left, the R was on the right side, I'm moving it to the left side. So I'm just changing the order. The P's cancel, we're left with just the R. Oops. And R is going to equal what's on the left side, I over PT. Use literal equations to solve problems. Example, Sarah is going to the store 2.5 miles away. She has only 15 minutes to get there before they close. At what average speed must she ride to get to the store before they close? We're going to use the distance equals rate times time formula. Remember that maybe from science? Distance equals rate times time. And since we want to know at what speed, the question asks at what average speed must she ride? And so we want to solve for speed. Well, rate and speed are the same thing. So just remember that. Speed and rate mean the same thing. So we are going to solve this literal equation d equals RT for speed because that is what we want to figure out. We want to figure out her average speed. So to do that, we're going to divide by t. And the t's cancel, leaving us with r equals d over t. Now we can figure this out because we know the distance, right? We know the distance is, we'll use different colors. The distance was 2.5 miles, and the time was 15 minutes or less, right? So we're gonna plug the time here, and we're gonna plug the speed here. So the rate, or the speed, is going to equal 2.5 miles, that's the distance, divided by 15 minutes. To figure out her speed, we have to divide 2.5 divided by 15, and I get 0.167, and that's going to be miles per minute. Well, what does that mean? Next problem, rewrite a formula. Write the formula for the area of a triangle, A equals 1/2 base times height, in terms of height. Find the height of the triangle when A equals 18 inches squared and B equals 9 inches. Let me do a little bit of review with you right now. So if we have a triangle and we want to know the area of the triangle, we're going to do base times height, and because base times height is for a rectangle, this triangle is actually half of a rectangle, right? So if I were to make this a rectangle, this blue piece would go into half of the triangle and this blue piece would go into the other half of a triangle. So that's where this equation 1/2 base times height comes from. We want to solve that equation in terms of h. So in terms of h. So we want to figure out what h is. All right, let's write that equation. For that formula, A equals 1/2 base times height. And we're looking for h. So the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of the fraction, and the way that I'm going to do that is multiply by 2. So I'm going to times both sides by 2, and that gets rid of 1/2 because 2 is the reciprocal of 1/2, and it cancels. 2 times 1/2 is 1, goes away. 2 times A is 2A equals BH. I still am looking for h though. I still want to know what h is. So the next step would be to divide by b. So I'm going to divide by b on both sides. The b's cancel. Leaving us with 2a over b equals h. That's what we wanted. Or if you'd prefer, you can have h on the left side is equal to 2a over b. That's the first part of the problem. That's rearranging our equation by solving for that variable in the equation that it told us to look for. So it's just like solving a regular equation. You just treat the variables like they were numbers. So we multiplied by 2 to get rid of the fraction. We divided by b to get rid of the b, and then we just isolated h. H is on one side of the equation. Find the height of the triangle when the area equals 18 inches squared and the base equals 9. So what we're going to do is we're just going to plug in the area and we're going to plug in the base to the equation over here. So we're going to plug it into here and we're going to plug it in to the area. So from there, we have h equals 2 parentheses. A was 18 inches squared, that's the area, divided by 9. That is going to equal 4 inches, right? So we have, this was our first answer, and this was our second answer, equals 4 inches after we plugged in 18 for the area and 9 for the base. Write the formula for the volume of a cylinder. V equals pi r squared h in terms of h. So we're looking for h again. We're looking for the height again. Oops. What is the height of the cylinder if the volume V is 12 pi centimeters squared and the radius is 2 centimeters squared? Okay, so the volume, or I'm sorry, the radius is right here, it's squared, and the volume is the V right here. And pi is just a number, right? It's 3.14159, and it doesn't repeat, it just goes on and on. It's irrational. So the first thing we want to do is we want to solve for terms of h. V equals pi r squared h. This is the volume for a cylinder. So here's a cylinder. And we have a radius here. And the circle is the pi r squared. That gives us the area of the circle. And then to find the volume, we have to multiply by the height. Okay? So we wanted to solve for the height, h. So what we have to do, it's actually easier than the last one because we don't have a fraction. We're just going to divide by pi r squared. And that cancels the pi r squared, leaving us with h equals v over pi r squared. We had to isolate the h. Now, they gave us the volume and they gave us the radius, so we're going to plug that into our equation. H equals, the volume was 12 pi, and the radius was 2 centimeters, and we have to square it, and we also have to divide by pi because it was pi r squared. Okay, this is a little messy, so we want to rewrite it. It also equals, we'll just leave the 12 pi here. 2 squared is 4, and we'll put the pi on this side. If you notice, there's a pi in the numerator and a pi in the denominator. Those will cancel. Now we have 12 divided by 4. That's going to equal 3. So it equals 3 centimeters, and that's it. So it's one dimension, it's the height. So We were looking for the height. We plugged in the radius, which was 2. And then we plugged in the volume, and the volume they gave us as 12 pi. It's kind of weird. They gave it to us as 12 pi. And then we just simplified that. Okay, so this was volume, and this was radius. So if you want to color code, it kind of helps to keep things organized. It's up to you. Applying formulas. This one is going to come up a lot in science. The temperature on a given winter day is 5 degrees Fahrenheit. What is the temperature in Celsius? And so I gave you the formula in Fahrenheit. We want to figure out the formula in Celsius. So let's write that formula. Fahrenheit equals 9/5 Celsius plus 32. We want to solve for Celsius. So we're going to subtract 32 from both sides. That leaves us with F minus 32 equals 9/5 Celsius. Now to get rid of that fraction, we're going to multiply on both sides. I'm going to use a different color. So we subtracted 32 on both sides. Now we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. We're going to multiply by 5/9. That will make it cancel. And on the other side, since there's two things, I'm going to group them and multiply by 5/9. When I do that, the 5/9 cancels the 9/5, leaving us with just C equals 5/9 times F and 5/9 times 32, which is 17.7 repeating. So minus 17.7 repeating. All right, now that we have it in terms of Celsius, so see it's in Celsius is all by itself, just like we started with Fahrenheit was all by itself. It's isolated. Now we're going to take the Fahrenheit which is right here. And we're going to plug in 5 degrees because it was 5 degrees Fahrenheit. So starting with our new formula that's all arranged, we're going to rewrite it. I'm going to put C on the other side. We were allowed to do that. Now on the left, 5/9. The F is 5 degrees minus 17.7 repeating. And I'm just going to do this in the calculator. 5 divided by 9 times 5 minus 17.77777. I get negative 15. So it would be negative 15 degrees Celsius. And that would be our second answer. Excellent. That was section 1.4.